Hello and welcome to this edition of the MPFT Podcast. The move from childhood to adulthood can be a stressful time of change for all young people and their families. When a young person is experiencing mental health issues, that transition from child and adolescent mental health services, or CAMHS for short, to adult mental health services can be particularly challenging. A new Transitional Care Team has been launched in Staffordshire by the Trust to support young people with navigating these complex changes. My name is Mark Fletcher from the Communications team, and I'm joined today by Emma Brassington, who works in the Transitional Care Team as a supporting transition and adulthood readiness, or STAR worker for short. We really hope you enjoy this episode. Emma, thank you very much for joining us here today on the MPFT Podcast. I'll start with asking if you could talk about some of the difficulties and the challenges that someone transitioning from CAMHS to adult mental health services, what they may be experiencing in that transition.
CAMHS and IMHT, which is Integrated Mental Health Team, that's an adult service. They're very, very different environments. CAMHS is obviously a child and adolescent service, and when you transition over to adult services, it is more about your independence and taking control of your mental health. And I think young people find that very challenging and struggle with that because they've kind of had all this therapy in CAMHS and they're maybe expecting a similar environment in IMHT.
Yeah.
So we're finding that young people are transitioning over to IMHT and actually disengaging with therapies quite quickly. That's kind of the reason as to why our team was created.
So you touched on it a bit there, but could you just clarify who the team supports exactly?
Yeah, so our team supports young people transitioning from CAMHS to secondary and primary care in adult services. So obviously that primary care includes GP and talking therapies. Secondary care includes IMHT and also ILS.
And ILS is?
Intensive life skills. Okay. We also support young people transitioning out of CAMHS. So that's like a really specific piece of work where the CAMHS practitioner has recognised that that young person needs that extra bit of youth work, that professional friend work. Right. So we kind of support young people to integrate back into the community as well.
So we're appreciating that there is no one size that fits all here, and certainly your service is unique in terms of the transition that you have from CAMHS into adult services, but could you give some examples of the sort of work that you do, both with the young person and the family, as well as with other services such as CAMHS?
Yeah, so I think what's so special about our role is that we are an informal role. We're not clinicians, we're not mental health practitioners or social workers, and we make that really clear to young people and their families because we are more professional friends and positive adult role models in their lives. So that means the work that we can do is really flexible with them. So young people transitioning from CAMHS to adult services might recognise that to boost their mental health improvement, they might want things like signposting to groups and clubs in their community. It might be accessing different services to support with their recovery, such as I've worked with STARS, which is Staffordshire Treatment and Recovery System, for the T3. T3 is just the young people's service as opposed to adults. Okay. So I've worked with them closely, supporting young people on different varied recovery journeys that they may have. I've worked with MPFT social workers, I've worked with school liaisons and student wellbeing services in schools to support the young person and do a lot of advocacy work there. And I think young people really appreciate that about our role, how we can kind of fit into lots of different spaces and we're so flexible about what we can do, and it doesn't feel pressured from them because they have recognised what would be supportive with their recovery, but it's more practical skills like it might be like creating a CV, applying for part-time jobs, getting re-engaging into education, re-engaging with their community, and it's kind of controlled by them for them, and we just help with that. We like to call life admin. Right. So we kind of help with all those things for young people just to make them feel a little bit more like they're accessing their therapy, but also those practical skills that they'll need to kind of flourish in life. We kind of help support with that.
That definitely sounds. I mean, I know it's the no 2 days are the same is a real cliche, and the NHS it's very much the case. But that does sound to me that is a classic example where no 2 days will ever be the same, because you're going to be dealing with an individual who's going to be picking up one particular service, with another service, and there's a real holistic approach there in terms of the way that you treat and support a young person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what's so great about, my role is that, mental health is a spectrum, and we might have young people come into our team that I like to use the word kind of poorly, so quite poorly, but we have young people that just might need that tiny bit of motivation. And it's about not treating everybody the same and working around that young person who's in front of you. And we manage to build great relationships with young people because, we have that professional banter, that professional friend approach, and they offload a lot of wishes and feelings onto us, which we can say, oh, would that be okay with you if I can pass that on to your doctor or your social worker? And actually it creates this holistic approach around them and marrying up lots of different professionals to kind of come together to work with that young person to help them thrive in adulthood and independence.
And on the subject of the relationships you have, so can you talk a bit about how the team's involved young people with lived experience of mental health and kind of how they've helped to shape the service into what it is currently?
Yeah, definitely. Young people have, from the get-go, have supported us with our team. So before our team was even, created and come into fruition in January of this year, when it was all starting, they consulted the CYP participation team, which is Children and Young People Participation Team. Yep. And what they did is they, got young people together who had been kind of through CAMHS and transitioned over to adult services and kind of said, we're creating this team to support that transition. How would that support you? What would that look like? So young people kind of chose our job titles. Okay. Young people chose what our leaflets look like and the colours used. And actually in our leaflets, it's autism friendly colours. Right. Young people chose and helped create our Thrive Guide, which our Thrive Guide is when we start working with a young person who is transitioning to specifically adult services, IMHT. We start creating it with them at the beginning of their transition and along their transition. So when they get over to adult services, their adult practitioner can read all of these things, and it helps eliminate that fear of I've got to maybe tell my story again, or that adult practitioner already recognises my triggers or when I'm feeling low and my achievements. So actually young people from that team, the CYP team, helped create that Thrive Guide and what they think would be useful for them at the time. And
it's in their words as well. At the end of the day, that's their story. It's their best place to provide that and give that story as opposed to having it written for them by somebody.
Definitely. And at the moment, I'm in talks with the same team to create feedback forms for our service because we recognise that the feedback forms might be a little bit too ambiguous from, MPFT. So we're creating ones that might be a bit more specific to our team. And again, I've had consultations with young people on that on the CYP team about what they think would be important that we gather feedback and how we can improve our work and just ultimately how we can make it more young person centred.
Right. So you've talked a lot there about the work you're doing. You've done a lot of work in a very short period of time. So I appreciate you're still a very new team at the end of the day. So could you talk about a little bit what comes next for the team? You sound very excited. You've got a lot of energy about the journey you're on here, and how you envisage building on the work that you've already done.
I think what our goal is to support CAMHS in getting into that routine of referring, when that young person is approaching that age and that time to talk about transitioning out of their service and onto whatever their next steps are, is getting in touch with us and even just having a chat with us. We have a panel once a month where CAMHS can refer a young person in, they come to the panel, they discuss the young person and what they feel their needs are transitioning, and on the panel are various different professionals from, talking therapies and IMHT and things like that, to create that, cohesive communication between child and adult services. So we want to help CAMHS in that aspect. And also, for those young people that are being referred to CAMHS at maybe 17 and a half that have missed that kind of boat for that CAMHS support, we're trying to support IMHT to say, okay, so you've had a 17 and a half year old come into your service, you can still have the transition here.
I was going to ask that about somebody who comes into the service really late on, but then has kind of not had that prior experience of being in CAMHS, so doesn't really understand what they offer fully, but then still is transitioning into an adult service.
Yeah, so we definitely can do those transitioning, even though it's not transition from CAMHS to adult services, it's still that transition into adult services and just helping them and being an adult and readiness for adulthood, and and helping them understand and navigate that really tricky experience, which it might be their first experience having therapy, and that's the first step, isn't it? Accepting that maybe you need help, and for a young person that maybe might not have any role models in their life to be in their corner, I think our job is really important to help do things with them and not for them, ready again for that adulthood and that independence in life.
Fantastic. Great place to leave it. Best of luck with what comes next. Thank you very much for joining us today, Emma. That's really, really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We really hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and thanks to Emma for joining us today. You can subscribe and find other episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, and can also watch episodes by going onto our YouTube channel. Check out the show notes for the link.